Hey everybody, I got a project file in Affinity Designer. I'm using Affinity Designer 2, but the solution that we are trying to achieve is making sure that the marigold's background is not showing through the sugar skulls. As you can see, there's no fill, only the black outline and design. And if you were to put any of these marigold background in and make them visible, they're going to show through. I'm going to show you two different solutions on how to do this. I'm going to use solution 1, and the other solution you could use for your own thing. So what we're going to do is we're going to double click on the first sugar skull off to the right, and it's going to open up in its own window. Now I'm going to name the group Sugar Skull, just so I can keep track of things. And then I'm going to add 2 more layers. I'm going to name my first layer red, and my second layer I will name white. You're going to understand here in a bit. Now I am going to move the sugar skull to the very top and move the red just below it. And on the red, I'm going to stay in the vector persona, and I'm going to get my rectangle tool and draw a rectangle over it, and I am going to color it red. So the red for me is with my vision. I want to be able to see what I am doing with this. Now on the white, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get the pen tool, and what we're going to do is we're going to trace around the border of this just so that it can show. But what I want to do is I want to make sure, at least for right now, I probably should have kept it there, that the white is above the sugar skull. So we are going to change it to a white background, 0 stroke. We're going to make sure that the smart mode is on so that it has curved. And we're going to use the fill. We're going to make sure that the fill is checked. And then it is just a matter of tracing around the whole sugar skull. So we're going to do this. Oops, I may have accidentally hit that off there. Let's do this. And just right where the curves are. No need to be precise with it. I can see that my white is not showing up. We'll fix that here in just a second. Move on down. So probably by about this time, you're going to understand what I'm wanting to do, or what I'm doing here. I'll do this, almost there. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and do a white fill. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to drag this underneath. The only reason why I had it up at the very top is to make sure that I can see and that it's going to trace on the outside. So it looks good. Now what we're going to do is we're going to drag it underneath here and make sure that there isn't any white showing. Let me get out of here and go back to the selection tool. Now the nice thing about this is that while this is opened up into the window, it's going to still make the changes to your sugar skull here. So the marigolds are gone. And then what I'm going to go ahead and do is just, I want to keep this red layer here just in case, but I want to make it invisible so it won't show up on the final thing. And then as you can see, the marigolds are gone and you just have the sugar skull. Now, what you can do with the other one, this is solution 2. So if you like solution 1, you can stop, or you can look at solution 2 and see where I'm going to go with this. I want to get down to the curves layer Actually, let's just go ahead and do the exact same thing before. We're going to name this Sugar Skull 2. And we're going to name this Red. And we're going to basically do the exact same thing. But we're going to use a flood fill to be able to get the things that we want. So I'm going to go on the red. And again, doing the same thing in the vector persona. Of course, there's no fill. We'll change that fill. So that's there. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to go to the white flood fill. And I'm going to go to the flood fill tool here in my vector persona. And I'm going to change it to white. And you have to be, you have to be on your curves layer and didn't have to do the white fill. So we're just going to fill it in like this. This is a bit more time consuming than my solution, but what it offers is a way of precision fill if you wanted to do individual colors on each segment. And of course, it's going to fill in the areas that are closed. These petals are closed. And then, of course, in the areas where it is not, like around in here, you had open borders, it's going to fill the whole thing until it finds a closed border. So this is a way that you can do to be able to get the things individually filled with color. And I suppose you could even get into individual designs. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of all that I have done by hitting my Control Z. And we are going to go ahead. We're going to go ahead and do the exact same thing that I did before. It's just a lot faster with the pen mode. A lot faster. So we're going to go ahead and do our white. Make sure that we don't have a stroke and make sure that we're using fill. And I want my work, I want to zoom in a little bit. It doesn't have to be precise, just so that, whoops, let's see the one thing that I did not do. I didn't set it to smart. I want my curves on this. Now I want to leave that there, but I want to show you how we're going to fix that here in just a bit, just in case that happens again. Again, it doesn't have to be precise, just so long as it stays on the inside of your main outline for whatever design you're doing. And I like zooming in because it allows me to put the individual nodes where I want them to go. And the red is so that I can clearly see. You may not need to use red, but I have vision problems, so I have to use the rather harsher colors to make sure that it's filling in. So we're going to go ahead and do this. So we're going to go ahead and go. So there is an obvious gap, and you are going to see it whenever we put it behind this. So if I were to go back to my original document, you're going to see that there's a little bit of a gap there. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to add, while we're in the pen mode, we're going to go ahead and switch to the node tool. Now all we're going to do is we're just going to add a node and drag it up. So these are the things that you can do to each one of these nodes. And of course, you're going to adjust the curvature of the node. And we see we have a little gap here. So we're going to pull that down. Make sure that everything is nice and filled on the outside. Looks pretty good. So I'm going to go ahead and collapse this. We're going to make that red layer invisible, but still keeping that layer. And we're going to go back. So right now we've got everything where we need to be. Everything looks good. There are no marigolds that are showing through the skulls. And we have a nice white background. And I hope that this helps people that are working with wireframes in Affinity Designer. This works for Affinity Designer 1 as well as simple basic tools that you're using. And I hope this helps some people out later on. Okay, this is a little bonus that you could do if you're using the flood fill to be able to fill in particular areas. Now, I've gone ahead and done a flood fill on specific parts. What you need to keep in mind is that each time you use the flood fill, it is creating, as you can see, extra layers, extra vector layers of flood. Now, if you're an Affinity Designer, you can go to Styles and drag a style over into each and every individual flood layer that is there. So each one of these can be its own thing. Whoops, I don't want to do that to the curved lines, but you can do that to the curved lines. So I want to go ahead and put that right here and put this right here. But you get the idea. You can do this with regard to masking. So if I wanted to go, let's say, to the big one, the largest one here, I could go over, let's say, to my assets and drag, let's see, I want to go ahead and use a paper, and I want to drag this over here, but I'm going to go ahead and drag it down to the big one and do a masking layer on this particular sugar skull. So there are lots of things that you can do once you use the flood tool. You can add a mask to a particular layer. And in case you didn't know what I did, I'm going to go ahead and show you. So I highlighted that layer, and I'm just taking an asset and dragging it onto the area. And then once it shows up into my layer, I'm taking that image or that asset that I just dragged over and dragging it down to a particular deal, and it makes a masking layer. Now you can edit this anytime that you want to, but it masks the whole thing. So if you have wireframes, you can use the flood fill to fill in individual areas, and then you can add individual styles, colors, or assets, textures, things like that to each one of these. And it's just a little added bonus should you want to go in this direction. Later.